Margaret has no pension, no savings, and can't rely on her child. This is how she supports herself in old age. Margaret had always envisioned her golden years as a time of peace and reflection. She imagined sitting on a cozy porch with a cup of tea, watching the sunrise, surrounded by the love and support of her family. But life had other plans. At 72 years old, she found herself without a pension, without savings, and, most painfully, without the support of her only child. Growing up, Margaret had believed in the traditional values of hard work, sacrifice, and family. She spent decades dedicating herself to her job as a seamstress, often working long hours to ensure her son, Daniel, had a better life. She never prioritized saving for retirement because she assumed that, like in the old days, children would take care of their parents in their later years. But times changed. Daniel, now a successful businessman, had moved abroad years ago and gradually distanced himself. His phone calls became rare and his visits even rarer. Margaret understood that he had his own family and responsibilities, but the realization that she could not rely on him for support was painful. With no pension and no financial backup, Margaret faced a difficult reality. If she wanted to survive, she had to find a way to support herself. Step 1. Reassessing her life. Margaret's first step was to take a hard look at her current situation. She lived in a modest house that she and her late husband had bought decades ago. The property was her only major asset, but maintaining it was becoming more and more challenging. Bills piled up and repairs were needed, yet her only income came from occasional assistance programs and small freelance sewing jobs. She considered selling the house and moving into a smaller apartment, but the thought of leaving behind decades of memories was heartbreaking. Still, survival was more important than sentimentality. So she made a plan. Step 2. Downsizing and smart budgeting. Margaret started by decluttering her home. She sorted through years of accumulated belongings, selling furniture, clothes, and collectibles that she no longer needed. She was surprised to find that many of her vintage items had value. Her old sewing machine alone fetched a decent sum from a collector. With the money she earned from selling unnecessary possessions, she paid off some outstanding utility bills and stocked up on essential groceries. She also made a strict budget, cutting down on unnecessary expenses. No more cable TV, she switched to free online entertainment. No more extravagant grocery shopping, she learned how to cook simple, affordable meals that lasted longer. Her new lifestyle was humble, but it gave her a sense of control. Step 3. Finding work as a senior citizen. Margaret knew she needed a steady source of income, but at her age, job opportunities were limited. She tried applying for part-time cashier positions at local stores, but many employers preferred younger workers. Then she had an idea. Why not leverage the skills she already had? For years, she had been an exceptional seamstress. Even though her eyesight was not as sharp as it used to be, she could still mend clothes and create custom pieces. She spread the word in her community and started offering her sewing services. To her surprise, business picked up quickly. Neighbors and friends began bringing her clothing repairs, and word of mouth spread. To expand her reach, she joined online platforms where people sought handmade, custom-tailored clothing. She learned how to take orders through social media and even received a few bulk orders from small boutique owners. It was hard work, but it gave her purpose. Step 4. Finding community and emotional support. Living alone was not just financially challenging, it was emotionally draining. Margaret missed having people around her, so she made an effort to reconnect with her community. She started volunteering at a local senior center, helping others with knitting and sewing projects. In return, she met friends who supported her emotionally and offered small job referrals. She also began attending free workshops at the local library, where she learned new skills, including basic computer literacy. These skills helped her manage her small business more efficiently. Step 5. Passive income and creative solutions. As Margaret became more comfortable with technology, she discovered new ways to earn money. She joined online platforms where she could sell simple sewing patterns and tutorials. Though she wasn't making millions, the extra income helped her afford small comforts, like an occasional treat at her favorite cafe. She also explored renting out a room in her house to a trustworthy tenant. By carefully screening potential renters, she found a responsible university student who needed an affordable place to stay. The rent money helped cover her bills, easing her financial burden significantly. Step 6. Accepting life's unpredictability and finding joy. Margaret's journey was not easy. There were days when she felt exhausted, and there were moments of deep sadness when she thought about her son's absence. But instead of dwelling on what she had lost, she focused on what she could control. She found joy in small things: a sunny afternoon in the park, a cup of tea with her newfound friends, and the satisfaction of completing a sewing project. She no longer worried about what she didn't have. Instead, she embraced the independence she had built for herself. A new chapter in old age. Margaret's story is a testament to resilience and adaptability. She proved that even without a pension, savings, or a child to rely on, it was possible to create a fulfilling and financially stable life. Her journey was not about wealth or luxury, but about survival, self-respect, and the power of the human spirit. Margaret's plan for old age: finding stability without a pension or savings. Margaret had always imagined her old age as a peaceful time, a reward after decades of hard work. But as the years passed, reality unfolded differently. At 72, she found herself alone, without a pension, without significant savings, and with a son who had built a life far away, seemingly forgetting his responsibilities to her. Many would have fallen into despair, but Margaret chose another path. If she couldn't rely on anyone else, then she would rely on herself. She knew the first step was ensuring financial stability. With no pension to fall back on, she had to create her own safety net. She carefully examined her expenses, identifying every area where she could cut costs. The house she lived in was too big for one person, so she decided to rent out a room, turning her home into a source of income instead of just an expense. She adjusted her lifestyle, replacing store-bought meals with home-cooked ones, becoming more mindful of electricity and water usage, and making sure every penny was spent wisely. Yet cutting expenses alone wouldn't be enough. Margaret needed a steady income, something she could manage even as she aged. Sewing had always been a skill she enjoyed, so she turned it into a business, taking in alterations and custom sewing projects from her community. But she knew relying on a single source of income was risky, so she expanded her efforts. She started selling handmade crafts online, teaching virtual sewing lessons, and even babysitting occasionally for neighbors. Every bit of income added to her sense of security, making her less vulnerable to uncertainty. Beyond financial stability, Margaret knew she had to take care of her health. Aging came with its challenges, and without proper planning, medical expenses could quickly spiral out of control. She committed to a routine: daily morning walks to maintain her mobility, simple exercises to prevent joint pain, and a diet focused on nutritious, home-cooked meals. She took advantage of free health checkups offered in her community, ensuring that she caught any health issues early before they became costly problems. Even with her careful planning, she understood that emergencies could arise at any time, so she set aside a small portion of her income into an emergency fund, no matter how little she could spare each month. But financial and physical well-being weren't enough. Margaret also had to think about her emotional health. Living alone had its quiet moments, but she refused to let loneliness consume her. She sought out companionship in community groups, attending gatherings at the senior center where she met others who, like her, were navigating old age independently. She started volunteering, offering free sewing lessons at a local women's shelter, finding both purpose and friendship in the process. As the years passed, Margaret found herself growing stronger, not weaker. She no longer viewed her old age with fear, but with a quiet confidence that she had built something stable for herself. She didn't dwell on the absence of her son or the what-ifs of the past. Instead, she focused on what she could control: her choices, her attitude, and the life she was creating for herself. She had learned one invaluable lesson. In the end, the person you can always rely on is yourself. Margaret had come to understand that retirement was not an end, but a transition, one that required as much careful planning and effort as any other stage of life. Without a pension or significant savings, she could not afford the traditional notion of retirement, where one simply stops working and enjoys leisure. But that did not mean she was doomed to a life of struggle. Instead, Margaret embraced the idea of working in old age, not just for financial security, but for a sense of purpose and belonging. At first, the thought of finding work in her 70s had seemed daunting. The job market was not particularly kind to older individuals, and she lacked the energy to compete in industries dominated by younger workers. However, Margaret realized that she did not need to compete. She simply needed to carve out a space for herself in a way that was sustainable and fulfilling. She began with the skills she already possessed. Sewing had always been more than a hobby for Margaret. It was a craft that she had honed over decades. She started small, offering alteration services for neighbors and friends. Word quickly spread, and soon she found herself with a steady stream of clients. People appreciated her attention to detail, her patience, and the care she put into every stitch. Over time, she expanded her offerings, taking on custom projects and even teaching sewing lessons to younger generations eager to learn traditional skills. The work not only provided her with financial relief, but also gave her a renewed sense of purpose. Every morning, she woke up with a schedule, a list of projects to complete, and clients to meet. She no longer felt like an invisible old woman fading into the background. She was needed, respected, and appreciated. Yet sewing alone was not enough to cover all her expenses, and Margaret knew she had to diversify her sources of income. She explored the possibility of remote work, an idea that had seemed foreign to her at first. With the help of a local librarian who taught her the basics of using a computer, she learned to navigate freelance platforms where she could offer simple administrative tasks, proofreading, transcription, and even online customer support. She wasn't making a fortune, but the additional income provided her with breathing room, allowing her to put away small savings for emergencies. Working at her age also brought unexpected joys. One of the most rewarding aspects was the sense of community it fostered. Through her sewing classes, Margaret found herself surrounded by eager learners, young mothers wanting to make clothes for their children, retirees looking to pick up a new skill, and even teenagers who had grown tired of mass-produced fashion. These interactions filled her days with conversations, laughter, and a shared sense of accomplishment. She had become more than a seamstress. She had become a mentor, a teacher, and a friend. But as much as she enjoyed her work, Margaret was mindful of the physical limitations that came with age. She had to balance productivity with self-care, ensuring that she did not push herself too hard. She scheduled regular breaks, made time for walks, and practiced gentle stretching exercises to keep her body from stiffening after long hours at the sewing machine. She had learned, sometimes the hard way, that longevity in the workforce at her age required listening to her body and pacing herself accordingly. The notion of working in old age, once a source of anxiety, had transformed into a source of pride. Margaret no longer felt burdened by financial insecurity. She felt empowered by her ability to sustain herself. She had redefined what retirement meant, not a period of decline, but an era of reinvention. While others saw aging as a slow retreat from productivity, Margaret saw it as an opportunity to engage with the world on her own terms. Her journey was not without its challenges. There were days when she felt exhausted, when clients were demanding, when technology frustrated her, and when she wished she had planned better in her younger years. But those moments of difficulty were overshadowed by the satisfaction of knowing she was still in control of her life. As Margaret sat at her sewing table one evening, threading a needle under the glow of her old reading lamp, she reflected on how far she had come. She no longer feared old age the way she once did. She had built a life that was not only self-sufficient, but also meaningful. She had proven that dignity in aging did not come from wealth or pensions, but from resilience, adaptability, and the willingness to keep moving forward. Margaret had discovered that the secret to a fulfilling old age was not to resist work, but to embrace it in a way that felt right. Work was not just a means of survival, it was a path to independence, connection, and joy. And as long as her hands could hold a needle and her mind could find purpose in what she did, she knew she would be just fine. Margaret had never imagined that she would find herself navigating old age with neither a pension nor substantial savings. But as life often does, it had presented her with unexpected challenges, and she had no choice but to face them with resilience and determination. She had spent years hoping that her son, the only family she had left, would be there for her. Yet, as time passed, it became painfully clear that she could not rely on him for support. Instead of succumbing to despair, Margaret chose to embrace self-reliance, a lesson she had learned in bits and pieces throughout her life, but had never truly appreciated until now. The first and most crucial lesson Margaret learned about independence was that relying on oneself was not a burden, but a form of empowerment. At first, the idea of being alone in old age terrified her. She had always envisioned a peaceful retirement surrounded by family, the comfort of shared meals, and the warmth of loved ones. But life had different plans. Her son had moved away, consumed by his own responsibilities, and though he occasionally called, it was clear that his priorities lay elsewhere. Margaret realized she could either dwell on her disappointment or take control of her future. She chose the latter. To support herself, Margaret took on small jobs that allowed her to remain active and engaged with the world. She started by babysitting for a neighbor, then expanded her efforts by working part-time as a receptionist at a community center. It was challenging at first, waking up early, standing for long hours, and adjusting to new tasks. But Margaret found that she enjoyed the sense of purpose it gave her. Work was not merely a means of survival, it became a source of fulfillment. She met people, shared stories, and learned new skills, proving to herself that growth did not have to stop with age. Another valuable lesson Margaret learned was the importance of adaptability. The world had changed significantly since she was young. Technology, social norms, and even the job market were vastly different. Initially, she struggled with these changes, filling out online forms, using smartphones, and navigating modern workplaces felt overwhelming. But instead of resigning herself to feeling outdated, she made an effort to learn. She attended free technology classes at the library, asked younger colleagues for help, and practiced daily. Slowly, she became more comfortable with the digital world. Adaptability, she realized, was not just for the young, it was a skill for life. Margaret also discovered the value of financial wisdom. Without a pension or savings, she had to be meticulous about her expenses. She learned to budget carefully, cutting unnecessary costs and finding creative ways to make ends meet. She took advantage of senior discounts, cooked meals at home instead of eating out, and even started a small vegetable garden to supplement her groceries. More importantly, she learned that wealth was not just about money, but about resourcefulness, knowing how to stretch a dollar, how to fix things instead of replacing them, and how to make the most of what she had proved invaluable. One of the most profound lessons of self-reliance came in the form of emotional strength. Loneliness had been one of Margaret's biggest fears. Without a partner or close family nearby, she worried that she would feel isolated. However, she realized that independence did not mean solitude. She made an effort to build connections in her community, joining book clubs, volunteering, and participating in local events. She learned to enjoy her own company, embracing solitude as a time for self-reflection rather than something to be feared. The more she engaged with life, the less alone she felt. Through her journey, Margaret also came to appreciate the importance of health and well-being. She had seen many people her age struggle with illnesses that left them dependent on others. Determined to maintain her independence, she prioritized her physical and mental health. She walked every day, practiced yoga, and made sure to eat nutritious meals. She also took care of her mental health by staying engaged in activities that brought her joy, reading, writing, and even trying her hand at painting. Independence, she realized, was as much about maintaining her body and mind as it was about financial or social security. Perhaps the greatest lesson of all was that self-reliance did not mean rejecting help, but knowing when and how to seek it. Margaret learned to accept kindness from others without feeling like a burden. She understood that being independent did not mean doing everything alone. It meant being in control of her choices, including the decision to accept support when needed. Whether it was asking a friend for advice, relying on a community program, or even just enjoying the companionship of those who cared for her, she found strength in knowing that independence and interdependence could coexist. As years passed, Margaret no longer feared old age. She had built a life that was both fulfilling and sustainable. She had proven to herself that self-reliance was not about having all the answers, but about having the confidence to navigate whatever came her way. She had turned what once seemed like a dire situation into an opportunity for growth, resilience, and ultimately, contentment. And in doing so, she had become not just a survivor, but an inspiration to those around her. Margaret's story was a testament to the power of self-reliance. It was a reminder that even in the face of uncertainty, one could carve out a path to security and happiness. She had faced life's hardships head-on and emerged stronger, wiser, and more independent than ever before. In the end, she had not just supported herself in old age, she had thrived. As Margaret reflects on her journey, she realizes that true security does not come from pensions, savings, or even the support of family. It comes from resilience, adaptability, and the ability to rely on oneself. Though her path was filled with hardships, she has found a sense of fulfillment in carving out her own independence. She has learned that aging is not a burden, but an opportunity to redefine life on one's own terms. Margaret's story is a testament to the power of self-reliance and perseverance. For anyone facing uncertainty about their future, her journey serves as a reminder. No matter the circumstances, you can take control of your own destiny. If you found Margaret's story inspiring and want to hear more real-life experiences and valuable insights, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel. Stay with us for more powerful stories that can change lives.